Hi, I'm Adele, and this is how I composed a documentary film score. Pant, Hoot is a documentary short by director Richard Reeds, featuring Dr. Jane Goodall and Stany the chimp whisperer. The official film synopsis states, a genocide survivor transcends overwhelming odds to become a master chimpanzee linguist. As the world's chimpanzee population dwindles in the wild, one man risks everything to care for a group of mistreated animals rescued by Jane Goodall's Chimp Eden Sanctuary in South Africa. Stany, a survivor of the Burundi genocide, overcomes insurmountable odds to become one of the only humans to master the complicated Pant Hoot chimp language. Recognizing that it's not just a chimpanzee-human struggle, he's taken upon himself to reconnect with our closest relatives on this planet. Love knows no man-made boundaries in this universal story about understanding. So, from the very beginning, I knew that we needed the audience to become emotionally connected to this story. We need them to understand Stany's story, but also the rescued chimpanzees he cares for. And that's where my job comes in. I tend to work on film scores chronologically from the beginning until the end, but weirdly enough, Pant Hoot was backwards. I started with the choral piece that plays during the end credits. In early discussions with the director Richard, he expressed that he wanted an African choir piece. Not only does it immerse the audience into the film's setting, but it is a sign of respect to those in the story. Stany is from Burundi, a country in East Africa. Unfortunately, Stany was forced to flee Burundi during the 1990s due to a cultural genocide. Stany had to leave his home and family behind. But before he left, he took the chimps he was caring for at the time to rescue them from the war. So, alone in a new country, Stany began as a keeper at Chimp Eden in South Africa. Just like Stany, these chimps were victims of war, of mistreatment at the hands of humans. They were fearful of humans, except for Stany. He had an uncanny way of connecting with the chimps emotionally, communicating with ease and understanding their language and their stories. He quickly gained the attention of Dr. Jane Goodall for his abilities, and he began teaching other keepers how to pant hoot too. Jane Goodall states, "Only if we understand can we care. Only if we care can we help. Only if we help will they be saved." That is where the choral piece began. I knew that I wanted the quote to be translated into Kirundi, the native language of Burundi. Surprisingly, there are pretty much no resources online for translating into the language, at least free resources. But Stany came in clutch and translated the quote, even pronouncing it over WhatsApp voice notes so that I could instruct the singers how to sing them. Even across the world, Stany was incredibly helpful, and this score would not have happened without him. So I have the quote translated, but it wasn't enough. So I went digging on the internet, and I found Burundian traditional whispered chanting, a low chant that is traditionally performed for royalty. It is the ultimate sign of respect towards Stany and the chimpanzees. The piece ended up being soprano, alto, tenor, and bass, a cappella. It starts with whispered chanting of the translated quote from Jane, transforming into sung Kirundi, and finishes with the English translation. It took me about 5 months to perfect, gather my singers, and record it. The process is often long and difficult, but the final product was worth all those late nights in the studio. Once I had perfected the choral piece, it was time to score the rest of the film. Richard and I decided that each character of the film will have their own sound. So for example, Jane was piano and strings. The chimpanzees were African percussion and solo strings. And can you tell I'm a string player? They are everywhere in my music. Due to the low budget, I wrote everything in the box, or in my DAW, Logic Pro X. Here's what my session looks like. I use samples from Spitfire Audio and the East-West Composer Cloud. It's not always ideal to have a sample-based score, but composers must be flexible and do the best we can with the resources allotted. I myself was still in college and mega broke when I was writing this, so there was no way I could finance the recordings from my own pocket. As you can see from my session, it's not huge with a billion tracks like some other scores may be. I did this on purpose. Simplicity is key. It is a short documentary, so I didn't want to overwhelm my listener with tons of different instruments or a million motifs. I want the score to be cohesive and easy to follow. I learned recently from composer Joe Kramer that movies don't exist to prove a composer's genius. They exist to tell a story. Scoring Pant Hoot was not the time for me to show everything I've ever learned. I was there to help tell Stany's story. So, armed with my sonic tools, I wrote. Now, besides the choral piece, the rest of the movie had no written score. I was kind of just writing what I liked and editing and revising according to Richard's feedback. Now, not every project is like that, but again, because I was not recording anything else besides the choir, there was really no need for a score. And the back and forth process continues like that for a month or so. Anyone familiar with film scoring knows this all too well. You have to remember that you are offering a service to the client, the director. Pretty much whatever they say goes. So stay gracious, be on time, and make each cue better than the last. Luckily, Richard didn't need a ton of revisions as he was pretty flexible. Once the cues were finalized, it was time to master. Films with bigger budgets will allow me to hire mixers and the like to help me with mastering the track for release. But because it was a small and a non-profit documentary, I agreed to do everything on my own. So in comes the mastering. You can see I added a few effects. I'm not a huge techie person, so every score is a learning opportunity to become better at this side of things. It's always a rewarding feeling to finish the project with more skills than I had at the beginning. Pant Hoot was a labor of love. A labor of love and patience. And I'm so grateful to have been nominated for Best Score for a documentary short this year at the International Sound and Film Music Festival. Shameless plug really, but still really cool. Pant Hoot has now been accepted in film festivals around the world, and we are still waiting to hear from a lot more. I hope that this story inspires people just as it inspired me. Stany's story deserves to be heard. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Feel free to catch up with me on Instagram at Adele Composer and see what my next projects are. And if you guys have any questions, leave them down in the comments below or shoot me a DM. Peace and love. Have a great rest of your day.
Drop it. Drop it.